The morning sun peeked through the dusty blinds of Sunny's diner, casting golden stripes across the one counter. It was just another Tuesday, the kind that blended into hundreds before it. The smell of fresh coffee and bacon filled the air as Rose wiped down the counter for the 5th time that hour. She had been working at this roadside diner for 3 years now, and at 32, she knew every crack in the tile floor and every regular customer by name. The bell above the door jingled, and Rose looked up with a smile already forming. It was 8:15 on the dot. Old man Cooper never missed his Tuesday breakfast. He walked in slowly, his leather jacket creased with age just like his face. At 70, his steps weren't as steady as they once were, but he still rode his vintage Harley everywhere he went. He had parked it outside, the chrome still gleaming despite the machine being almost as old as he was. "Morning, Rose," he called out, his voice gruff but friendly. "Beautiful day to be on the road." "Morning, Mr. Cooper," she replied, already reaching for the coffee pot. "The usual." He nodded and settled onto his favorite stool at the counter, the third one from the end. His weathered hands, marked with age spots and old scars, placed his riding gloves carefully beside him. The other breakfast regulars nodded in his direction, a silent acknowledgement among people who saw each other often but spoke little. "How's that bike running?" Rose asked as she poured his coffee, black as night, just how he liked it. "Like a dream," Mr. Cooper answered, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "That old girl's got more life in her than most people give her credit for. Kind of like me, I guess." Rose laughed as she wrote down his order, scrambled eggs and rye toast, though she didn't really need to. In 3 years, he had never once ordered anything different. The cook, Hank, saw her writing and just nodded. He was already cracking eggs into a bowl. As Rose moved between tables, checking on other customers, she kept an eye on Mr. Cooper. He wasn't just any customer. He was a reminder of a different time. The patches on his old leather jacket told stories of a motorcycle club that had once been famous in these parts. The Highway Veterans, they called themselves, mostly men who had served in Vietnam and found brotherhood on the open road afterward. "Not many of us left now," Mr. Cooper had told her once, on a quiet morning when the diner was empty. "Some died in the war, more died after. The rest just got too old to ride." But he kept riding, even though his children begged him to sell his bike. "The day I stop riding is the day they put me in the ground," he'd said with a stubborn set to his jaw. Rose brought his breakfast over, the eggs still steaming. Mr. Cooper reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet, careful and deliberate in his movements. Along with paying for his meal, he always left Rose an extra $5 tip. It wasn't much, but on his fixed income, she knew it was generous. "Keep the sunshine coming," he'd say, tapping the bill before sliding it across the counter to her. It was their little routine. Rose tucked the tip into her apron pocket with a genuine thank you. She had a soft spot for the old biker. In a town where most people looked right through waitresses like they were invisible, Mr. Cooper always saw her. He asked about her daughter's grades and remembered when she had tests at school. He noticed when Rose was tired or when she had done something different with her hair. The diner was starting to fill up with the mid-morning crowd. Rose refilled coffee cups and took orders, moving efficiently between tables. Through the large front windows, she could see more cars pulling into the parking lot. Tuesday mornings were usually steady but not too busy, just the way she liked it. Little did she know that this ordinary Tuesday was about to become anything but ordinary. As the bell above the door jingled again, she glanced up, her welcoming smile freezing slightly as 5 teenagers walked in, laughing too loudly and taking up more space than they needed. Rose's eyes flickered toward Mr. Cooper, then back to the rowdy newcomers. Something in her stomach tightened, a small warning bell that experienced waitresses develop over years of reading people. She took a deep breath, adjusted her apron, and prepared to seat the new arrivals. The 5 teenagers grabbed a booth by the window, dropping their backpacks on the floor with a thud. They sprawled across the seats like they owned the place, all hoodies and sneakers and loud voices. Rose took a deep breath and grabbed 5 menus. Tuesday mornings weren't usually like this. Tuesdays were quiet, predictable. But something about these kids set her teeth on edge. "I'll be right with you," she called over to them with her professional smile, the one that didn't quite reach her eyes. The tallest boy, with spiky blonde hair and a phone permanently attached to his hand, nodded without looking at her. The others were too busy laughing at something on another phone screen. Rose glanced at Mr. Cooper, who was focused on buttering his rye toast with careful precision. His hands shook slightly. They always did these days, but he managed just fine. As she approached the teenager's table, she heard a snicker. The boy with the red hoodie was pointing toward the counter. "Check out Grandpa Biker," he said, not bothering to lower his voice. "Bet that bike outside is the only exciting thing that's happened to him since the Stone Age. Think he can even get on it without breaking a hip?" Another one added, a girl with bright purple streaks in her hair. Rose felt her shoulders tense. "What can I get you all?" she asked, voice cooler than before. They'd ordered 5 chocolate milkshakes and 2 plates of fries to share. As Rose wrote it down, she noticed Mr. Cooper struggling with his helmet. He always brought it inside rather than leaving it with his bike. "Trust is good," he told her once, "but a locked helmet is better." His arthritic fingers were having trouble with the chin strap, and she could see the flash of frustration cross his face. It was a small thing, but it was the kind of moment that hits you in the chest when you get older, when something simple becomes hard, and your body betrays you in new ways every day. The kids saw it too. Their laughter grew louder. "Maybe he needs a sippy cup for that coffee," the blonde one said, and his friends erupted in laughter again. Rose walked back behind the counter, placing their order with Hank, and then moving to help the other customers. She kept one eye on the teenagers, who were now openly watching Mr. Cooper eat. They were taking pictures with their phones, probably for whatever social media was popular this week. Mr. Cooper kept his eyes down, focused on his breakfast. But Rose could see the slight redness at the back of his neck, the way his shoulders had hunched forward slightly. He was aware of being watched, aware of being mocked. For a man who had once commanded respect everywhere he went, both in uniform and later in his biker gear, this kind of disrespect cut deep. Rose filled his coffee cup again. "How's the breakfast today?" she asked, trying to give him something normal to focus on. "Good as always," he answered, but his voice was quieter than usual. The bell above the door jingled as more customers entered. The diner was getting busier, and Frank, the manager, was still in the back office going over weekend receipts. Tuesday mornings were supposed to be when he caught up on paperwork. Rose was handling the floor alone, moving between tables with practiced efficiency. When she delivered the milkshakes to the teenagers' table, they'd barely acknowledged her. They were too busy with their phones, showing each other something and laughing. As Rose turned to leave, one of them, the boy with dark hair and a basketball jersey, wadded up his straw wrapper and flicked it. It sailed across the diner and landed right next to Mr. Cooper's plate. Not an accident. Rose knew it immediately from the high fives that followed. She picked up the wrapper and threw it away, giving the teens a warning look. They pretended not to notice, suddenly very interested in their milkshakes. For a few minutes, things calmed down. Rose delivered food to 3 other tables and refilled coffee cups. Mr. Cooper was almost finished with his breakfast, and she hoped he might leave before things got worse. He didn't deserve this. Not a man who had fought for his country, who still placed a small flag beside his plate every Memorial Day. But then she'd heard the laughter again, louder this time. One of the teens was doing an imitation of Mr. Cooper's slightly shaky hands, making exaggerated trembling motions while pretending to ride a motorcycle. His friends were practically falling out of the booth, they were laughing so hard. And that's when Rose saw something she'd never seen before. Mr. Cooper's eyes, usually so proud and bright, were damp. He blinked rapidly and stared down at his coffee cup, his weathered hands gripping it tightly. The girl with purple hair crumpled up a napkin and tossed it toward Mr. Cooper's back. It fell short, landing on the floor beside his stool, and that was enough for Rose. More than enough. Rose set down the coffee pot with a little more force than necessary. The clink of glass against counter made a few nearby customers look up. Her face felt hot, and she could hear her heartbeat in her ears. 3 years of customer service training told her to stay calm, to handle things professionally. But something deeper, something that had nothing to do with her job and everything to do with being human, was taking over. She watched as the teen with the red hoodie nudged his friend and pointed at Mr. Cooper again. Then the blonde one stretched his leg out into the aisle, pretending it was an accident when Mr. Cooper had to step carefully around it to reach the restroom. Their laughter followed the old man down the hall. "That's enough," Rose whispered to herself. She adjusted her apron, straightened her shoulders, and waited for Mr. Cooper to return to his seat. When he did, his face looked tired. He pulled out his wallet to leave his money on the counter. The teens were still watching him, whispering and snickering. The girl with purple hair held up her phone, clearly recording video now. "Bet he can't even start that bike anymore," one of them said loudly. "My grandpa's got a better ride, and he's on oxygen," another added. Mr. Cooper pretended not to hear, but his fingers fumbled with the bills in his wallet. Rose saw him drop a $5 bill, and before he could bend down to get it, the boy in the basketball jersey stuck out his foot again, as if daring the old man to try. That was the moment the tall boy with the spiky hair reached over and knocked Mr. Cooper's coffee mug with his elbow. The dark liquid splashed across the counter and onto the old biker's leather jacket, the jacket with patches showing where he'd ridden and who he'd been. "Oops," the boy said, not sounding sorry at all. "Guess those old reflexes aren't what they used to be." His friends erupted in laughter. Mr. Cooper stood there, coffee dripping from his sleeve, looking suddenly small in a way that broke Rose's heart. Without thinking about it anymore, Rose grabbed her serving tray and set it down with a bang. Every head in the diner turned toward her. The regular customers, who had been watching the scene unfold with uncomfortable silence, now sat up straighter, sensing something was about to happen. Rose walked directly to the teenager's table. Her hands weren't shaking. For the first time all morning, she felt perfectly calm. "You need to leave," she said quietly, looking at each of them in turn. The blonde one raised his eyebrows. "We haven't finished our food." "Yes, you have," Rose replied, her voice steady. "Your business isn't welcome here anymore." The girl with purple hair rolled her eyes. "Whatever. You can't kick us out. We're paying customers." "Not anymore," Rose said, collecting their half-empty milkshake glasses. "This isn't about money." The boy in the red hoodie leaned back, a mocking smile on his face. "Then what's it about, lady? You sweet on grandpa over there?" Rose felt her cheeks flush, but she kept her voice even. "That man served our country before any of you were born. He deserves your respect, not your mockery." "So he's some kind of hero just 'cause he's old?" "Please." The tall one laughed, looking around at his friends for approval. Rose leaned closer, keeping her voice low but intense. "While you were posting selfies and playing video games, that man was dodging bullets in Vietnam. He earned that jacket and those patches and the right to sit here and enjoy his breakfast without being harassed by kids who don't know the first thing about respect." The teenagers looked at each other, momentarily silenced, but only for a moment. "Whatever," the boy in the basketball jersey said finally. "We don't have to listen to this. We're not leaving." Behind her, Rose could feel the eyes of the other customers. She could sense Mr. Cooper standing very still at the counter, and she knew Frank was still in the back office, unaware of what was happening in his diner. This was her call to make, and she had already made it. Rose walked to the service station and picked up the pitcher of ice water. It was nearly full, condensation beading on its sides. "Last chance," she said, walking back to their table. "Leave now, or there will be consequences." The teens looked at the water pitcher, then at each other. The challenge was clear in their eyes. They didn't believe she would do anything. People like Rose, working people, service people, they always had to take whatever was dished out to them with a smile. That was the unwritten rule. "What are you gonna do?" the blonde one taunted. "Pour water on us? Then you'll really get fired." Rose felt a strange calm settle over her. Maybe she would get fired. Maybe this wasn't worth losing her job over. But when she looked at Mr. Cooper's face, at the quiet dignity there, at the coffee staining his treasured jacket, she knew some things mattered more than a paycheck. "You're right," she said softly. Then she lifted the pitcher and tipped it forward. The water poured from the pitcher in a perfect, ice-cold stream. It splashed across the table, drenching the teenagers' phones and soaking their clothes. The blonde boy jumped up with a yell as water dripped from his hair and nose. His friends scrambled back, eyes wide with shock. For a moment, the entire diner went silent. Then laughter erupted from a booth near the door. An older woman clapped her hands together in delight. A truck driver at the counter gave a low whistle of approval. Mr. Cooper stood frozen, his coffee-stained jacket forgotten as he stared at Rose with something like wonder in his eyes. "You crazy lady," the tall teen shouted, wiping water from his face. Look what you did to my phone. You'll pay for this, the girl with purple hair added, holding up her dripping device. My dad's a lawyer. Rose set the empty pitcher down carefully. Her hands were steady, but her heart was racing. You should go now, she said quietly, before I find more water. The teenagers gathered their wet belongings, muttering threats and curses under their breath. The boy in the red hoodie pointed a finger at Rose as they backed toward the door. This isn't over, he said. We know where you work. Not for long, I bet, another added with a smirk. The bell jingled as they pushed through the door, leaving puddles on the floor behind them. Rose grabbed a mop from behind the counter and began cleaning up the mess. A few customers offered words of support as she worked. Mr. Cooper approached slowly, his weathered face troubled. You shouldn't have done that, he said softly. Not for me. Those kids could make real trouble for you. Rose shrugged, continuing to mop. They were making real trouble for you. Someone needed to put a stop to it. I'd handled worse than a few rude teenagers in my day, Mr. Cooper said, though the grateful look in his eyes told a different story. Everyone deserves respect, Rose replied simply, especially those who've earned it. The diner was buzzing now, with excited chatter about what had happened. Someone was already showing a video they'd taken on their phone. Rose felt a prickle of unease. In today's world, nothing stayed private for long. She had just finished cleaning up when the office door swung open. Frank stood there, his face flushed and his phone in his hand. His eyes locked on Rose immediately. My office, now. Rose followed him, feeling the eyes of every customer on her back. She caught a glimpse of Mr. Cooper, who had returned to his seat at the counter. He gave her a small nod of support. Frank's office was small and cluttered with papers. He closed the door behind them and turned to face her, waving his phone in the air. Do you know what this is? He demanded. My phone's been blowing up for the last 5 minutes. One of those kids' parents just called. They're threatening to sue us. Frank, they were harassing Mr. Cooper, Rose began. They were. I don't care if they were dancing naked on the tables. Frank interrupted. You can't throw water on customers. What were you thinking? Rose took a deep breath. I was thinking that we shouldn't let people be bullied in our diner, especially not a veteran who's been coming here for years. Frank ran a hand through his thinning hair. Rose, business is down 30% from last year. We're barely staying afloat as it is. I can't afford a lawsuit. So we're supposed to let customers abuse other customers. Is that the policy now? The policy is to handle problems professionally, Frank said. Call me. Call the police if necessary. But taking matters into your own hands. That's not how this works. Rose felt something cold settle in her stomach. Are you firing me? Frank wouldn't meet her eyes. The video's already got hundreds of views online. The parents are calling for your job. I don't have a choice. You always have a choice, Rose said quietly. Not this time. Frank pulled an envelope from his desk drawer. 2 weeks' pay. I'm sorry, Rose. I really am. Rose stared at the envelope, not reaching for it. 3 years of early mornings, of holiday shifts, of covering for other waitresses when their kids were sick. 3 years of building relationships with people like Mr. Cooper. All ending because she'd stood up for what was right. Keep it, she said, her voice surprisingly steady. I don't want your guilt money. She untied her apron and placed it on his desk. Without another word, she walked out of the office, head held high. The diner had gone quiet again, everyone watching as she emerged. Mr. Cooper stood up, his face lined with concern. What happened? He asked, though his eyes said he already knew. Looks like I'm suddenly free for lunch, Rose replied with a small smile that didn't reach her eyes. No, anywhere that's hiring. Mr. Cooper followed Rose out to the parking lot, moving as quickly as his old knees would allow. The morning sun was high now, making the chrome on his Harley glint like silver fire. Rose was already at her car, an old blue Honda with a dent in the passenger door and a faded bumper sticker that read, My kid is an honor student. Hold on there, Mr. Cooper called, his voice carrying across the asphalt. Just wait a minute. Rose turned, keys in hand. Her eyes were dry but red around the edges. I'm fine, Mr. Cooper. Really, it's not your fault. The heck it isn't, he replied, coming to a stop beside her. You lost your job standing up for me. That makes it my business. Rose leaned against her car, suddenly tired. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind the cold reality of bills that wouldn't get paid and a daughter who needed new shoes for school. "I'd do it again," she said, and meant it. Those kids had no right. Mr. Cooper nodded, his weathered face thoughtful. "Let me give you my number. In case you need, well, anything." "I'm not looking for charity," Rose said quickly. "And I'm not offering any," he replied with a hint of his usual spark. "Just a friend who might be able to help." She hesitated, then pulled out her phone. Mr. Cooper dictated his number carefully, and she saved it under Mr. C. Then he surprised her by asking for hers. "Got some people I want to talk to," he explained vaguely. "Might take a few hours. Don't go far, okay?" Before Rose could ask what he meant, Mr. Cooper was walking toward his motorcycle. He pulled on his helmet with careful movements, checking the chin strap twice before swinging his leg over the seat. The engine roared to life, loud enough to make a few people in the diner look out the windows. Rose watched him pull out of the parking lot, wondering what an old biker could possibly do about her situation. Then she got in her car and drove home, trying to figure out how to tell her daughter that Mom had lost her job over a pitcher of water. At home, Rose changed out of her waitress uniform and into jeans and a t-shirt. She sat at her small kitchen table with a cup of tea, scrolling through job listings on her phone. Nothing looked promising. Most restaurant jobs in town paid less than what she'd been making at Sonny's, and she had built up those tips over years of regular customers. She was looking at an application for the grocery store when her phone buzzed. A text from a number she didn't recognize. "Turn on Channel 5 News now." Frowning, Rose grabbed the remote for the small TV in the corner of her living room. Channel 5 was the local station that usually covered county fairs and traffic accidents. She turned it on just in time to hear the anchor's voice. Unusual scene at Sonny's Diner on Highway 16, where dozens of motorcycles have been arriving over the past hour. The camera shot showed the diner's parking lot now filled with bikes of all kinds: Harleys, Indians, custom choppers. Leather-clad men and women were standing in groups, some going into the diner, others talking outside. The camera zoomed in on a familiar figure, Mr. Cooper, standing in the center of the group, gesturing as he talked. Rose's phone buzzed again. This time it was her old coworker, Penny. "Are you seeing this? They're all asking for you." Another text came in from a different number. "You don't know me, but I ride with Pete Cooper. We're at the diner. You're a hero, lady." Rose sat down heavily on her couch, staring at the TV in disbelief. The anchor was interviewing a big man with a gray beard and sunglasses, his leather vest covered in patches. "We take care of our own," the man was saying. "And today, that includes the waitress who stood up for one of our brothers when nobody else would." The camera panned to show more bikes arriving. 10, 20, 30, they kept coming. The parking lot was overflowing, with motorcycles now lining both sides of the highway. The reporter looked both nervous and excited. "Tom, I'm being told there are bikers coming in from as far as 3 counties away." The Highway Veterans Motorcycle Club has put out a call on social media, and the response has been overwhelming. Rose's hand flew to her mouth. Highway Veterans, that was Mr. Cooper's old club, the one from the patches on his jacket. She had no idea they were still active, or that so many riders would respond to a call from an old member. Her phone kept buzzing with texts from numbers she didn't know. Her hands were shaking slightly as she picked it up again to see a message from Mr. Cooper. "Hope you don't mind the company. We're just getting started. Can you come back to the diner?" Rose looked at the TV again. The camera was now showing Frank, the manager, standing in the diner doorway with his mouth slightly open, watching as more and more bikers rolled into his parking lot. Rose pulled into the gas station across from Sonny's Diner and stared in disbelief. The parking lot she'd left just 2 hours ago was now a sea of motorcycles. They spilled out onto the grass, lined the highway shoulder, and filled every available space. Men and women in leather vests stood in groups, talking and laughing. Many wore patches similar to the ones on Mr. Cooper's jacket. Her phone buzzed again. "Mr. Cooper, I see you across the street. Come on over. It's okay." Taking a deep breath, Rose crossed the highway. Heads turned as she approached, and a path seemed to open up for her. She felt like she was walking in a dream. A big man with a bandana tied around his head nodded to her. "You the waitress?" When she nodded, he stuck out his hand. Thank you for looking out for Pete. He's good people. Pete. It took Rose a moment to realize he meant Mr. Cooper. In all these years, she'd never known his first name. More bikers approached, each wanting to shake her hand or pat her shoulder. An older woman with silver hair and a leather vest covered in patches pulled her into a quick hug. My husband rode with Pete in the old days, she explained. When we heard what happened, we had to come. I don't understand, Rose said, looking around at the growing crowd. How did you all know? Pete called his son, who's running the club now, the woman explained. His son called everyone he knew, and they called everyone they knew. She gestured to the bikes still arriving. Word spreads fast when one of our family needs help. Rose found herself led through the crowd toward the diner entrance. There, standing by his bike, was Mr. Cooper. He looked different somehow, taller, prouder, the years seeming to fall away as he stood among his people. Rose, he said with a smile, meet my family. A younger version of Mr. Cooper stepped forward, same eyes, same nose, but with dark hair instead of white. I'm Tom, Pete's son, he said, shaking her hand firmly. Dad told me what you did. How you stood up for him when no one else would. It wasn't that big a deal, Rose said, embarrassed by the attention. It was to him, Tom replied seriously. And that makes it a big deal to all of us. A local news van pulled up, a reporter and cameraman jumping out. Rose noticed that Frank was watching from the diner window, his face pale. So what exactly is happening here? She asked. Tom grinned. Well, we thought we'd all come have lunch. At the same time. And maybe breakfast tomorrow. And dinner. For as long as it takes. As long as what takes? As long as it takes for your boss to realize he made a mistake firing you, Mr. Cooper explained. These folks all ride for different clubs now, but they still respect the code. You stand by those who stand by you. Rose looked around at the sea of leather and chrome. There must be hundreds of you. 483 at last count, a woman with a tablet said from nearby. And more on the way from the next county. The Facebook post is going viral. The reporter was approaching now, microphone in hand. Excuse me, are you Rose? The waitress from the video. Before she could answer, the diner door opened and Frank stepped out, looking nervous. The crowd of bikers went quiet, all eyes turning to him. Rose, he called, his voice cracking slightly. Can I talk to you for a minute, please? Tom put a hand on her shoulder. You don't have to talk to him if you don't want to. It's okay, Rose said. I'll hear what he has to say. She walked toward Frank, aware of hundreds of eyes watching her. The news camera was rolling, capturing everything. She stopped a few feet away from her former boss. What is it, Frank? He ran a hand over his face, glancing at the crowd of bikers, then back to her. This is unbelievable. There are people lined up out the door. Hank can't keep up with the orders, and they're all asking for you. I don't work here anymore, Rose reminded him. Remember? I made a mistake, Frank said, the words coming out in a rush. I was worried about the business, about a lawsuit. I didn't think about what was right. A few feet away, the reporter was narrating quietly into her microphone, capturing every word. Mr. Cooper and his son stood nearby, arms crossed, listening intently. I'd like to offer you a job back, Frank continued, with a raise and an apology. He glanced nervously at the crowd again. A public apology. Rose looked back at the sea of bikers who had come to support her, strangers who had dropped everything because one of their own had asked for help. She looked at Mr. Cooper, who gave her a small nod of encouragement. The camera light was blinding bright as the reporter moved closer. Rose took a deep breath and turned back to Frank. Rose looked at Frank's outstretched hand, then at the sea of leather-clad supporters behind her. The moment stretched like taffy, sweet with possibility. Part of her wanted to walk away, to tell Frank he could keep his job and his apology. But another part, the practical part that knew about bills and rent and her daughter's school supplies, whispered that pride wouldn't put food on the table. A raise? She asked finally, her voice steady. Frank nodded quickly. Assistant manager, with benefits. A murmur ran through the crowd. Someone whistled in approval. The news camera moved closer, capturing every word. And what about the next time someone stands up for what's right? Will they get fired too? Rose asked. Frank's face flushed. "I made a mistake," he repeated. "I was scared of losing business. Instead, he gestured at the packed parking lot. I almost lost the heart of this place. You." Mr. Cooper stepped forward, his leather jacket still bearing the coffee stain from earlier. "The boy's offering you a promotion, Rose. That's not nothing." "It's not," she agreed. "But I need to know something first." She turned back to Frank. "Those teenagers, if they come back, what happens?" Frank straightened his shoulders. "They're not welcome here anymore. Not after what they did." Rose nodded slowly. Then she held out her hand. "I'll take the job." A cheer went up from the crowd. Motorcycle horns honked in celebration. The reporter stepped forward, thrusting her microphone toward Rose. "How does it feel to go from fired to promoted in less than 3 hours?" she asked. Rose blinked in the camera light. "Honestly, like a dream." "And what about all these bikers? Did you know they would come to support you?" Rose looked at Mr. Cooper, at Pete, and smiled. "I didn't know. But I'm learning that when you stand up for people, sometimes they stand up for you too." The story might have ended there, a heartwarming tale about community and doing the right thing. But then Tom, Mr. Cooper's son, stepped forward with a leather vest in his hands. "The highway veterans have a tradition," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "When someone earns our respect, they become family." He held out the vest to Rose. "This is for you. Honorary member." Rose took the vest with trembling hands. It was heavy, the leather worn soft with age. On the back was the club's emblem, an eagle over an American flag with the words "Honorary Road Sister" beneath it. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "You don't have to say anything," Mr. Cooper told her. "Just wear it proudly." As Rose slipped on the vest, her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a text from her daughter. "Mom, why are you on TV?" Rose laughed, showing the message to Mr. Cooper. "Looks like I have some explaining to do." "Tell her to come down here," he suggested. "There's someone I want her to meet." An hour later, Rose's 12-year-old daughter arrived, eyes wide at the scene before her. Mr. Cooper introduced her to a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a laptop bag. "This is Lisa, our club treasurer," he explained. "She handles our scholarship fund." Lisa smiled at the girl. "Your mom did something special today. She reminded us what courage looks like." She handed Rose an envelope. "The highway veterans would like to help with your daughter's education. It's not much, but it'll grow every year until she's ready for college." Rose opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a certificate for a scholarship fund with her daughter's name on it. The amount made her gasp. "We take care of our own," Lisa said simply. By evening, the crowd had thinned somewhat, though many bikers promised to return in the coming days. The diner had enjoyed its busiest day in history, with every table filled from lunch until closing. Frank had worked alongside the staff, serving coffee and making change, his earlier arrogance replaced by genuine humility. As the sun began to set, Rose found Mr. Cooper sitting alone by his motorcycle, watching the remains of the day fade into purple. "Thank you," she said, sitting beside him. "For everything." He shrugged, embarrassed by her gratitude. "I just made a few calls." "You changed my life," Rose corrected him. "Why?" Mr. Cooper was quiet for a moment, his weathered hands resting on his knees. "When you get to my age, you look back on your life and wonder if you made a difference. Today, I know I did. Not because of what I did, but because I knew someone like you." Rose looked out at the highway, where a group of bikers was starting up their engines, the rumble echoing across the parking lot like distant thunder. For the first time since that morning, she felt completely at peace. "Same time next Tuesday?" she asked. Mr. Cooper smiled. "Wouldn't miss it for the world." "But next time," he added with a wink, "I'll bring a few friends."